Tonight on The Conversation, we interrogate the state of Jamaica's democracy. Are voters choosing with conviction or by color? I'm joined by political commentator Germaine Barrett, and later we'll be joined by United Independent Congress UIC candidate Garth Barnett as we explore whether new parties can bring new thinking or if tribal politics still reign. Let's talk about it when we continue. Recent polls suggest voter turnout could slightly improve, but entrenched partisan thinking still shapes perception. How should we understand that overall statement? Germaine, welcome to the conversation. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me. Hello to your viewers, and it's been a quite a while, Kwame.
Yes,
I've
too
been on
long.
this platform.
Too
Too
long,
long, far
yeah.
too long.
So,
So the polls are out. We've had the Blue Dot polls a few weeks ago, and now we have the Don Anderson polls. That's going through the new cycle, and you would have detected some strange information coming out of the Blue Dot, the Don Anderson poll,
yeah.
where about one third of persons polled indicated that they don't know anything that the government has done that's significant. They don't know what the achievements are.
So,
And it does point to two facts really. One, people exist in echo chambers, you see. There is a new reality where traditional media, isn't getting through to people in the ways that it used to in the past. In the past, uh, you make a national broadcast as a politician or somebody of national ilk, and the information is percolated right across the society.
yeah.
Not so much anymore, unless it's viral. Yes, unless it hits social media and engage with that audience. So there's a huge segment of the population that, despite how aggressively the leadership of the country tries to promulgate information
They
to
won't
them,
get through to
it's
them.
just not getting through. It's just not getting. They're just disconnected.
That was
And
one. What's the other
then you
one?
have the partisans. Sorry, repeat that.
No, I was telling you to tell me about the second point.
The second point, the partisans, those persons who are locked in their echo chambers, they consume information that is only relevant to their biases, quite frankly. And so, if it is that you are pro a particular party that's against the government, you're seized with information that would indicate that the government is doing nothing. You're not engaging with the information coming from the government, and therefore you will also conclude that the government is doing nothing.
So, what does this say, though, broadly about our political awareness?
It says that there is a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done to engage with contemporary citizenry and voters, really. It does say that there is a challenge that confronts the political leadership of the country. It does indicate as well that there is a real and present threat to the democracy, because if it is that you don't have the information, you're not accessing the information, you're existing in echo chambers, and you're not prepared to really engage, then you can't be a meaningful participant within the democracy. Those are major, major concerns that I don't know that the political leadership or civil society, for that matter, is really grappling with in a real meaningful way. I think what is happening a lot of is just people are communicating a lot with the bases. So the JLP communicating to their base, the PNP communicating to their base, and I don't know that there's a tremendous amount of effort or sufficient effort to engage, for example, with independent voters. And that is going to be problematic for the democracy at large.
Oh yes, because when I hear you saying both parties are communicating primarily to their basis, I'm now forced to think about what about those persons who see themselves, well, one of two, they're either not for nor against any of the political parties that are there, so they're undecided, or there are those who just say that they're Jamaicans and whichever party presents the better alternative to them, they'll vote along those lines. How can the parties mobilize themselves so that they can be heard by this particular group?
The latter group, Kwame, that you just mentioned, the persons who indicate that they are Jamaicans, they are patriotic and committed to this island home, and that they are voting in favor of the party that convinces them that their plan, their agenda is what is best relative to the other party. That is the group that I think is most important in terms of the kinds of encouragements that we need to make and the shifts that need to be happening more within the body politic of the country. And so those people, some of them, many of them may engage with conversations and get information from government, from the opposition, and so forth. But I think a major part of the problem is that when, for example, the political parties have their rallies and their campaigns, who comes out? It is the base that comes out. It is the party loyalists that comes out. It is not the independents who are going to be coming out and, jumping up and going on with a bag of things with the laborites or the comrades, as the case may be. And so they are not being communicated within those platforms. And so a lot of times the conversation to them seems very limited and just not sufficiently engaging and concerning to them because it's not pitched to them.
All right, so I'm just piggybacking now on the first statement that we had made. It said nearly a third of respondents, they weren't able to name a single success or failure of the Holness administration. All right, so we hear about that, and the question was really about the political awareness that exists now. But then following up from that, I want to find out whether or not this lack of independent thinking, if it's a reflection of political fatigue, misinformation, or something deeper.
So all of those factors that you've just listed does contribute. I think as well what contributes is the fact that we have two political parties that, quite frankly, are not divergent fundamentally. It's not like in the days of the 80s and in the 70s rather, when you had a Michael Manley and an Edward Seaga, polar opposites, democratic socialism versus, party strong on capitalist values. We don't have that kind of disparity anymore between the two dominant political parties, right? And so that doesn't create a kind of an excitement to pull people either way. Secondly, people recognize that, well, if it's JLP win or PNP win, it's going to be the same reality for me, fundamental at the core. Both parties want to fix my road, both parties want to give me water, both parties, quite frankly, want to lower my taxes, all of these things. So there is not a major distinction to create a kind of a focus for people to place their votes either way.
But there's something that I don't think I'm fully understanding it yet. So the polls are showing some level of polarization between the masses. That's one. But you have just stated that ideologically they are now closer together in terms of there's no stark contrast between either of them. But what could have led to that particular, this current level of polarization that we're seeing?
So I think a part of the polarization factor is the conversation that's being had in the politics. If you listen again to the campaigns and you hear the PNP stance is always the government is corrupt, the government is engaging in mismanagement of the affairs of the country. There's little to nothing good coming from the government, and that's a kind of polarizing language that the PNP feels forced to communicate because of the sentiments coming from the other side, the GLP, which is to say, we are doing unprecedented things. So how do you engage with that? You don't want to concede that yes, unemployment is radically low, and poverty has achieved an unprecedented low, and so forth. You don't want to concede those things. You want to. A lot of what is happening is just nitpicking. You talk about things, for example, like the various things that are of concerns within the political discourse right now are things that are not hugely important to the average Jamaican. And that's what the contest is about, really.
So there's a but, because based on what I've seen, though, from the findings of the polls now, an interesting fact came up that infrastructure was both the top-cited achievement as well as criticism. And so the question now, is this a matter of political branding at work?
So that's an interesting data point you're highlighting there. So you know that we've have had a lot of messaging surrounding the Spark program and the pothole patching program, forget what it's called. But both of those programs have been attempts by the government to address a massive deterioration on in the road infrastructure of the country. Yes?
Yeah.
And it has come to a climax now. A lot of people are peeved. The fact that the government is committing and is actively repairing 2 roads per constituency is far from adequate to shift the narrative in favor of the administration. So as much as the expenditure, $45 billion, is unprecedented, and the Prime Minister and the Works Minister is on the political platform touting that loudest at the top of their voice, fact is the average Jamaican who has seen their roads deteriorating over these last decade or so is dissatisfied and does not receive rather a tremendous amount of hope in the fact that, hey, Spark will come my way eventually. People want solutions, and people want solutions now. There's a kind of an impatience in the voting class that I think is unprecedented. Never have I seen people demanding so much.
Is that good or bad, though? Is that good or bad, or is it both?
So it is good. It is good. It is good, and it comes on the back, of course, of the political class granting themselves an unprecedented high compensation. Yes.
Yeah.
So
with increased wages coming increased expectations.
Precisely. So it's that. It's that. It's also the fact that coming out of the 2020 elections, the JLP having won a landslide, 49 seats. I think some complacency seeped in. When you think, for example, about St. Mary, Bobby Montague's Western St. Mary constituency, there is no reason why he should be so far behind, 19 points behind, when you look at the blue dot polls. There's no reason why the party chairman should be so far behind. Yes, it's because there are a complacency, and dare I say some amount of arrogance has set in. And now that we're on the verge of an election, the administration is recognizing that, boy, we really have to press the gas and win back the confidence of the people. And on the other side, the opposition has been doing significant work. I mean, they have really come from a state of a fractured party, a party in disarray, to a party that's far more united, smelling blood, and really aggressively pursuing victory at the polls.
So I won't ask you about that one yet, but I'm recognizing that there's somewhat of a generational split. You see, younger Jamaicans have credited the government's COVID-19 handling, while older voters favored infrastructure. So what does this particular split tell us when we look at the polls?
That's quite interesting. So, COVID-19 is a significant part of the reality of particularly young Jamaican. Think about it. If during COVID-19 you're in high school, or you're just in college, it's a significant part of your lived experience. It is that which is going to shape your reality for some time to come. All the Jamaicans, yes, it's significant, but they have lived life for quite a while longer. So the lived experience is far greater. And that does contribute to how much significance they place on something like COVID-19. COVID-19 was traumatic for all Jamaicans, particularly so for younger Jamaicans. Yeah. And so younger Jamaicans would be a little stuck assessing that period, assessing the government's treatment and how it is that we handle that particular experience, while older Jamaicans are more concerned with more long-term realities like infrastructure, like jobs, etc., etc.
Yeah. So as we go, just before we go to the break now, the question is whether or not an informed or more informed electorate can emerge from this particular climate, or are we looking at, with expectations, a political overall?
Yes, we have to change things up. We have to change the political communication. We have to change how it is that Jamaicans engage with politics. We have to deliver far more to the people of Jamaica, so that Jamaicans rather can recognize that there is every reason for them to become re-engaged and excited in what is happening in the politics of the country. Otherwise, we're seeing the slow and steady decline of the democracy, which quite frankly concerns me greatly.
All right, so we're going to go for our break now. But when we continue, perception and party loyalty remain closely tied. But what about accountability? When we turn to Parliament's new code of conduct and whether it's reform in name only. Continue to stay with us. A new job description and code of conduct for MPs have been introduced, but critics call it hollow. Is it reform or reputation management? That's the question that I want to ask you now, Germaine. You have been on the political scene for quite some time, commenting on both parties and whatever has been happening. But do you think that this new code, is it a symbolic move to quiet public discontent, or or it seems to be a sincere step towards political maturity?
Kwame, I draw some degree of comfort in the fact that we have this document put forward before us, at this time, because for some time now, civil society has been calling, asking, urging the administration to establish these codes of not the code of conduct, the job description, because it really isn't a code of conduct as much as it is labeled as such. It's a job description. And so what it does, it gives me hope that the agitation of civil society does lead to some results. Yes. And so, Jamaicans ought to draw courage and inspiration and continue to advocate for things that are important to us. So to that extent, I think it's positive.
Okay.
I think when I look at the document, though, I'm disappointed.
Why?
I'm disappointed that it is, one, there are two concerns I have. One, it does not indicate to me what are the mechanisms that are going to be instituted, beefed up, to ensure that members of parliament are compliant with the lofty statements within the document. Because a number of these ideas, are not new. For example, members of parliament were expected for some time now to attend sittings of the parliament, and there's a procedure by which you indicate that you can't come for medical or other reasons. Yes, that has been not at all policed, by the administrators of the parliament, by the very prime minister and the opposition leader who are supposed to hold their members of parliament to account. Yes, that has not been had. There's nothing in the job description that places a greater burden on these institutions, be it the parliament, be the leadership of the respective political parties, to hold their membership accountable. So it's just words. It's just a paper title, quite frankly. So there's that.
Yeah.
The other mechanisms that I'm particularly interested in seeing coming into being, which are not expressed at all in the document, are the right to recall, for instance. When it is that I vote for a member of parliament, and with the promise that the member of parliament will do this, that, and the other for me, as my representative, and then they act in a way that I find to be dissatisfying, I should reserve the right to galvanize my fellow constituents and to say, listen, we are no longer satisfied with your performance. We are done with you. Step aside and let's just go back to the polls to vote for somebody else. But that mechanism is there. So can you imagine, Kwame? You employ somebody for a job,
but you can't get rid of them.
The point at which you employ, you can't get rid of them until the next 5 years. It's absolutely crazy.
But then
right?
I see where the opposition, though, the opposition had made a statement that the policy was rushed and it lacked public consultation. So
it does. But I don't think it's in public consultation because, part of what we do in this country, we talk a lot. I'm a part of that group of persons who talk a lot, right? But the answers, we know what the answers are.
Yeah. But is this a missed opportunity, though?
It is a missed opportunity. I mean, I applaud it. It's better than where we were prior to the establishment of these job descriptions. But I think that we should have gone much farther. And I'm not like the opposition, because the opposition has a stance, where if they don't get perfect, they're not, they throw out the baby with the bathwater. They're not accepting the good. I'm prepared to accept the good while agitating for improvements. Yes? Yeah.
But I can recall, and let me drag my own memory though. I can recall that you have previously cited civic
Yes.
disengagement
Yes.
at some point in time. So would you recall system empower voters, probably that particular statement, or just politicized performance? How would you, yeah, would that particular recall that you talk about, would that serve to engage or re-engage the citizens, or is just a matter of, politicizing performance?
So I think it does a lot to re-engage and to get citizens to focus on their own political affairs. If I, as an active citizen within a constituency, am dissatisfied with the performance of my member of parliament, it's going to catalyze a ripple effect. I'm now going to go and I'm going to talk with my other constituents and I'm going to try to get them on my side. Again, that is political education at play. The member of parliament will have to come in and will have to try to win the faction over to his side. And that is how robust democracy operates, yes? But what obtains right now? You remember Parliament not performing? You might probably write a letter to the editor, or you write a letter to the member of Parliament or whomever. And of course, a lot of it is just ignored because, hey, job security. The member of parliament is secure in their job until the next election comes around.
So
So there is no incentive for mass mobilization of people within the constituency for a cause.
So let me segue a second. You had stated earlier that the opposition smells blood and are going for it. But do you think that, as it stands now, the opposition is in a position to mount a good campaign against the incumbents?
I think that the elections, whenever it is called, whenever it is had, will be close, much closer than, certainly, definitely much closer than 2020. It's going to be razor close. There are some strong JLP constituencies that you would have expected to be still in the corner of the JLP. Not so much anymore. The West is no longer going to be won entirely by the JLP, for example. St. Mary is looking as though it is in problem. I think it's one of the constituencies, one of the bellwether constituencies in St. Elizabeth, not the one by Floyd Green, the other one. It is also trending slightly in favor of the People's National Party. So there are several constituents that are now trending. I mean, Portland doesn't seem as green as one would have expected for it to be.
Not enough rain?
Not enough rain, maybe, yes. Or not enough prosperity.
Yeah.
The people of Portland might tell you. So it's going to be close. I think, though, if at this time the poll were to be had today, I think the administration would still win, but
by a smaller margin.
Much smaller margin. And the opposition has every reason to be excited and to keep biting at the chumps to see if it is that they can get over the edge at the elections.
Yeah, all right. So getting back on track now, given the public cynicism, do you think that institutional reform can work without parallel voter education?
That's a tough one. Which one you put, the horse before the cart or the cart before the horse? The fundamental issue with Jamaican politics and how we administer the affairs of this country is how we have come to bastardize Westminster democracy. How it is that, for example, members of parliament don't focus too much on their legislative responsibility, which is their core responsibility, which, quite frankly, as I've opined elsewhere, should be the central responsibility outlined in their job description, to the exclusion of all others. That particular, the reality that exists in Jamaica is that the member of parliament is seen as being the godfather of the constituency. The man who dole out the port barrel and so forth. The Constituency Development Fund, for example, is inimical to the proper development of the democracy, because you have state agencies that are tasked with administering state resources, but then you have member of parliament having a significant role to play in that regard. Members of parliament who, quite frankly, are not trained. They're not social workers. They're not They're not trained in the administration of these resources, and so you get every now and again scandals flaring up. Like, for example, the what's it called, the fertilizer scandal, or the black tank scandal the other day. Again, leave it up, leave all of those matters to the state agencies. Find out where the deficits are and empower them such that they can do their work, and leave the members of parliament to do the critical work of being a legislator. Yes, that's important. And so what we've created over time is a culture where constituents start to see their members of parliament as being the daddy of the constituency, the patronizing figure. Yes, doling out scarce benefits and spoils, and the members of parliament in return hold on to that reality, that responsibility, because it gives them a sense of largesse and the done, in the space.
So
ultimately,
couldn't it be a misunderstanding of your power then? Because I'm looking at it, and one of the questions that would immediately come to mind is, how would you Germaine, as a political commentator, how do you evaluate the government's broader policy responsiveness, especially regarding other things that we have spoken about, for example, cost of living and job creation and all of those things?
Yeah, so all of those things, all the macroeconomic indicators and the indicators that inform one as to the performance of the government, all of those things are trending in the right direction. Just yesterday, for example, at the, I think it's called the Innovation or Conference put on by the JCF, the Minister of National Security indicated that we have had less than 15 murders for the last several weeks. I mean, it's unprecedented, the levels of progress that we're achieving in any of the indicators. Be it debt to GDP, we're at 68%. Talking about crime levels, low by margins of 44%.
44%, yeah.
And so you wonder, and I think I hear the Prime Minister ask this question all the time as well. How is it with this data in any other jurisdiction, the government would be winning by a landslide? The government is doing seemingly better than Mia Mottley was doing in Barbados. And her performance secured her all of the constituencies in Barbados. Yes.
Yeah.
Yet we're seeing an administration, with the successes that it has achieved, having to fight for its political life. And it goes back to the fact that, again, Jamaica, the opposition has been doing seemingly a good and effective job at telling people that things are bad, telling people that the fact that they are not themselves receiving the flow, the benefits of all of the economic trends that are not being had, the government is doing a terrible job, right? I don't think that message is going to be sufficient to give them the win, but it has certainly caused sufficient persons to become riled up against the administration, despite the evidence, ignoring the evidence, quite frankly, and ultimately, giving the opposition somewhat of an advantage.
But based on what you're saying, though, I get the impression that it's more so a case where the opposition, as well as the incumbents, they have been able to rile up their respective bases, and they have not been able to communicate our message correctly to those who are undecided, those who are not among any one of the party loyalists. It sounds like that's what you're saying to me. So how can the messaging change now so that people can actually look at the data? Because I have an issue. When we see the data and the data is saying crime is down, and employment is up and poverty is down and all that, but still we can't say definitively whether or not there has been any real achievement for any of for the party in power. That kind of look, it sounds sketchy.
Yeah. So, and that's what I've been saying for some time now, that what is needed now that they've riled up the base and have gotten as many of their latent supporters to come to their side, they now have to go deeper and deeper into the bench, if you will, and actually court some independence. I think right now, in terms of how it is that the independent vote is growing, I think it's in favor of the JLP. Because the information being promulgated by the JLP is, listen, this is what we have done, have confidence that we will do even more, or at least the same as we have done before, which is relatively speaking persuasive. The opposition now needs to come with some very robust plans, clear plans. And we're not talking about plans to solve every problem. Elections aren't won by you scattershotting all sorts of ideas, attending to all sorts of problems. You have to be strategic, identifying what the major concerns are en masse by the Jamaican people, right? For example, a major concern, yes, unemployment is low, but the quality of jobs, the quality of earnings that the Jamaican people are having is not sufficient to make people really happy. People are still struggling. What do you as an opposition propose in terms of solving that particular concern? Yes?
Yeah.
The educational outcomes still paltry. I mean, positive word I hear that math results coming out of PEP are 50% improved relative to last year. And that's good, but we're still not doing well at 56% of passes in PEP, not good enough. What are the transformations that the opposition is going to come with now to convince Jamaicans that if given the opportunity, they will do a better job? We're not getting enough of that. What we're getting a lot of is a fixation and a focus on things that won't win them elections. For example, Dennis Chung's appointment to the FID and those kinds of issues. Yes, yeah, you rile up people and get people excited. But listen, at the end of the day, when people sit down at their dinner tables to make decisions, those things are not going to matter. It's not going to swing the political needle either.
So you're saying that the Dennis Chung issue is a non-issue, really?
It is a non-issue. It is for people like ourselves in intelligentsia who like to talk in media. But average Jamaican who constitute the masses of Jamaica are concerned about bread and butter issues. And it will excite the bases either way, but it will not shift fundamentally those people who call themselves independent voters. That is where the election is going to be won, the independent voters.
All right, so now that we're on that issue of independent voters, as we go into the break now, tell me about third parties. Do you think that if a third party ever had the opportunity to be elected, if they're able to actually bring real accountability to the political landscape?
I really would want to have a third party emerge that is truly viable, because I think there's a bit of a deadlock between the PNP and the JLP, and Jamaica isn't quite frankly benefiting from it. We need a third party, the NDM, the UIC, or some other third party that really provides a sort of a robust challenge to either political parties. And also, I recall when the NDM was really a force in the politics, in some constituencies, they managed to secure so much vote as to shift the net outcome in a way that was disruptive.
That mattered, yeah.
Political equilibrium, yes.
Yeah.
That's what we want. So we're not in an environment where a third party is likely to win anytime now, but a third party can actually be, quite frankly, the kingmaker with respect to who secures Jamaica House.
Wow. All right, so we ease into the next break now. Political reform may sound noble, but implementation is the real test. Coming up, the possibility exists that we'll be sitting with the UIC's Garth Barnett to assess his party's promises and potential to shift the landscape. Continue to stay with us. You're watching The Conversation. Welcome back to The Conversation. The United Independence Congress says it's time to rescue Jamaica from the two-party cycle. But what do they offer, and can they win? So we are joined now by Mr. Garth Barnett. You are the candidate for the Central Kingston division.
Yes, I am.
So yeah, welcome to The Conversation, firstly. Thanks for taking the opportunity to sit with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So what inspired your decision to represent the UIC in Central Kingston of all places?
Well, first let me say that I lived in two communities in the constituency, in one constituency, part of the constituency for about 5 months, and then in another community in the constituency for almost 4 years. But also, the constituency itself comprises the part of the Almontown division that Garvey held in the KCC. And as a Garveyite, I felt from a long time that I would love that opportunity to represent that community. And also, the community has a lot of issues. I work with youth in the community, from the ages of between 8 and 13, doing remedial work and reading basic mathematics and so forth. And there's a challenge within the communities of students leaving a particular primary school within the constituency, student as old as 12 years old, not being able to read. So hence the decision to put myself forward to see if I could make some meaningful change to what's happening within that constituency.
So this constituency is currently held by which member? Who's the member of parliament for that constituency?
The current member of parliament
Donovan Williams.
is Donovan Williams of the JLP.
And he's the brother to the former mayor. And prior to him, it would have been
Ronald Tweet, if my memory
a PNP strong. It's predominantly a PNP stronghold. Now, what do you think? What sets you apart from a Donovan Williams or from a PNP aspirant, considering that it has been traditionally seen as a PNP stronghold?
Well, I think the passion, the drive to want to make meaningful change to the community, that is one. New ideas built around community participation, community renewal, jobs for persons within the community, and to see how best I can coordinate with stakeholders to arrest the crime problem, but also the reading, the literacy rate among some students leaving primary school within that constituency. For me, I don't think over the last 30 years or so, there have been any meaningful change in the constituency in terms of constituency development. The community is plagued by crime. The community is ridden with a lot of derelict building. So there needs to be a community renewal itself. So, it fits in with the UIC policy in a clean and orderly society where people can reside in, and enjoy the best of what life has to offer.
So I'm going to include Germaine now. He's a political commentator for the most part, social and political commentator. The question that I want to ask you, Germaine, in light of all that we have discussed earlier and what you just heard, do you think that the UIC is attracting votes based on policy or frustration with people's frustration with the JLP and the PNP?
I am not clear exactly as to what the minutiae is of the policy of the UIC. But what I do know is that there is a segment of the voting base within that constituency, with our constituencies, that are just over the two-party system. The JLP and the PNP duopoly has not served in their estimation their interest. And I think certainly the UIC may very well have some access to leveraging support from those particular individuals. I think, though, that for the UIC to stand a chance, they will have to go more. They will have to be clear on the policy, because I mean, truth be told, what I've heard the gentleman here articulating is not new. You hear it all the time, even in the absence of a third party. The opposition is always saying, things are bad and so forth. But what are the innovative strategies that UIC has to offer to really change those particular unfortunate circumstances?
So one of the things that I was able to see, because a bold promise that was made was to abolish property taxes. And so my question to you, Mr. Barnett, would be how would you fund, how could we possibly fund that shortfall, and will a blanket income tax hit working families harder in order to ensure that that happens?
Well, what the UIC plans to do is to have a 10% tax across the board, GCT. But also, if we look at how the country is managed today, there's a lot of corruption where, with a UIC government in place, what the UIC plans to do is to stamp out the rampant corruption that is currently exists within the system. And we think if we were able to do that, then it would give us a lot of additional revenue to play around with. You know, there are ways, I mean, that we can also do this if we strategize in how we do our spending, and to eliminate spending money on things that are not a necessity, and put money where it is really needed.
But you say you want to strategize and spend on things that aren't, spend on things that are simply necessities. Are you able to highlight anything that this administration or the one before would have spent on that's not seen as a necessity, as you put it?
For us, we feel that the current government and previous administration have not thought to diversify the economy. And in doing so, it costs, we spend a lot of money in importing stuff. So if we had diversified the economy, he would have caused the economy or the country more opportunities to earn additional revenue. And I think that is one way that we, government have missed an opportunity in spending money to do necessary things that is needed to grow the economy.
So Germaine, from a commentator's perspective, is the Rescue Jamaica message resonant with voters?
I don't think so.
Why not?
Again, nothing that is being expressed. So I'm hearing a lot of broad thematic concerns. For example, and concerns that when articulated and solutions when expressed lead to more concerns. So the UIC seems to be on a campaign to reduce the government expenditure by cutting corruption. I don't know how we quantify the amount of corruption and how it is that they would go about cutting corruption in order to save and then redistribute those savings to other more worthwhile, purposes. I think these things are easier said than done. Yes, that's one. The second thing as well, I talk about cutting government revenue, cutting GCT from 15 to 10%, eliminating and property taxes. Those are massive losses to the system, And if it is that you're maintaining your commitment, for example, I imagine you'd want to pay teachers more, pay civil servants more, fix more roads, improve the physical infrastructure of schools. Those things cost more. So when you look at the ledger, you're talking about commitments to major expenditure, and on the income side for the government revenue, you are giving up so much revenue. It really doesn't balance out.
So pretty much then, so it's a matter of frustration with the JLP and the PNP, but we're not seeing where they're able to articulate more clearly what are some of the things that, how they would be able to address. Because one of the things that I'm seeing, though, is that there is a pledge to overhaul the education system. And that goes in line with what Germaine has just said.
Can I just ask a question, Kwame? Is the overhaul of the education system radically different from that which is proposed by the partisan report on educational transformation? 365 concrete policies have been put forward. The government has established the education transformation Oversight Committee, ETOC, that is doing significant work. What more would you do? What are the strategies that the UIC would want to put on the table for examination, for scrutinization,
Yeah, man.
that is not already included in 365?
I guess to simplify what Germaine is putting forward is what are some of the key pain points that you see there that the UIC would be able to address?
Well, let me just say that first we have to fix the system of governance, the structure of governance, and how government operate. Key to that is the legislative framework, changing of the constitution from what is current and from what is proposed, the idea of from the king as head of state to a president. We do not support the current format of the ceremonial president. We think it's not a true representation of freeing of ourselves and giving ourselves a true republic. What we propose is an executive president, one that is directly elected by the people. Also, we propose that both members of the House are elected, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, that each senator is elected on the basis of the parish that they represent and not at the whims and fancy of either the leader of the government or the opposition party. So it would be one of more of a participatory part of government where the people do have a say in the whole electoral process. But also we're looking to, as I stated before, be very vigilant where corruption is concerned, and also going after those who are involved in the process of crime, not the small players, but those who are the perpetrators of the crime itself. So, and also land reform, in that we feel that there need to be true land reform, in that we think that the people need to have land, and that is one of our key policy positions.
But I'm hearing, so yes, the people need to have land, but no, you're not going to be charging any land tax. You're going to be reducing any, what you call that now, the GCT. So you're reducing that. So I'm seeing where money is leaving the government's coffers, but I'm not seeing or hearing how will we be able to fund all those things. Because another thing that was stated, we see now where infrastructure, jobs, healthcare, these were top voter concerns in the last Gleaner poll that was conducted. My question is, how does the UIC's platform speak to these particular things?
Okay, let me just speak in respect to the land itself. What we intend to do is to make Jamaica into one of the largest organic farming states, if not in the Caribbean, but in the world. And what we intend to do is to allow for some of the, it's like a people partnership relationship, in that some of the proceeds from what is earned is given back to the individual, the citizens, as dividend in the form of somewhat of a land reparation. Or if an individual chooses to use that dividend which is coming to them to build a home or to repair a home, that dividend is going to give in. But what we also intend to do is to ensure that the youth who are leaving school, they are enrolled in a program that will allow them to, it's almost like you're you're on a job training, but it's a social program that will allow each and every individual who have not gone into university, but are out there on the street, that they are placed in a program that they can earn something, but also allowing for other person to give service in terms of in the military for a period of time.
So, wow, in the military. So, Germaine, given all that you have heard, what would be your critique of the UIC's platform position from the perspective, obviously, of as a commentator?
I think the UIC has an uphill task in convincing even Jamaicans who are dissatisfied with the current arrangements that these matters relating to alterations in the government system, in the structure of our government, constitutional reform and so forth, that they are important and will contribute materially to the improvements of the conditions that are of concern to most Jamaica. So that kind of communication, I'm suggesting that these are important ideas. I'm suggesting that for these ideas to become transferable to votes,
yes,
it has to be transmitted to people in a way that makes them convinced. And I think there's a lot of lower level issues that people are dealing with still in the society that would cause these issues to seem like esoterical and just high level conversation. So that's one. Second thing is,
go on.
But I'm still not convinced. And I know my friend here, Mr. Barnett is the name, yes?
Yes, Barnett.
Yes, Mr. Barnett wouldn't now be able to articulate clearly and convincingly, how the calculations are to be done and how the apportionments are to be done. But I'm generally concerned at any government, quite frankly, not just the UIC, but any government who says to me, listen, I will give up the taxes that I would be collecting from you otherwise, the GCT, the land tax. I'm going to give up all of these things. I will leave myself with very little. And then I'm going to give you a whole lot, right? The calculus just doesn't work out. The ledger is not balanced, yes? And so I'm not convinced, based on what I've heard now, that people who really think about these things would also be convinced.
So, the last question to you before we go to the break, and that question will also spill over to Mr. Barnett. Do you think that the UIC can truly mount a challenge in a landscape where third-party candidates have never secured a parliamentary seat, given what has been said?
Yeah, I don't think this election cycle is going to be the cycle at which they win. But I think if they're patient and persistent, they could potentially get there, yes? Just like what we had with the NDM. I mean, the NDM was the best prospect for a viable third party in Jamaica. And of course, we know what became of that. Bruce Golding shifted and went back to a more viable party, the JLP, and became leader of that party and Prime Minister. So yeah, it's a long game.
Long game.
Yeah, it's a long game.
What are your views on that? Do you think that in a situation where a third party has never won a parliamentary seat, do you think that your party has the wherewithal to mount a successful challenge in this coming election?
I don't think it's beyond us. I think the mood of the population is changing. I think as the day goes by, there are more persons that are coming forward, asking questions and giving support. So in that light, I think, we are going to see a significant outpouring of support for us at the poll. But also, I would want to tend to think that there's going to be some amount of surprise in this election, given the mood that I see on the ground, and a lot of people are going to be pleasantly surprised.
All right. So a vision without viability is just a dream. When we come back, Mr. Barnett stays with us as we explore the UIC's path forward and the systemic hurdles facing new voices in Jamaican politics. You're watching The Conversation. We'll be right back after these messages. Jamaican politics has long been resistant to disruption, but can principle finally break party patronage? And how far is the electorate willing to go for change? Mr. Barnett, you see, the UIC boycotted the 2020 elections in protest. You know, was that a miscalculation or was that a moral stance that was taken?
No, I don't think it was miscalculation, given what was happening during the whole COVID era, and that you know, that decision was not.
What was happening during the COVID era?
The lockdown, and you know, not being able to move around freely and to effectively mount a political campaign would have hindered us, you know, as a party, not having that amount of resources being pumped into the party, because the UIC has taken that policy not to seek private funding, but to seek funding from the public and the overseas diaspora, because we feel that who pays the piper calls the tune. And given all of that, you know, we don't think that we would have been effective in coming to the polls, so hence that decision to not to partake in that election.
All right, so you have chosen Central Kingston of all the constituencies there are. All right, this is a constituency with deep-rooted party loyalty. All right, so we spoke earlier about the fact that it's traditionally belonging to the People's National Party. It was ousted by Mr. Williams. So you don't see where there's space for a third party to come in. You know, outside of what you have said, are there any ground strategies that you can say, you know, you have now that will allow you to break through, given that you've only lived there for about four years and 5 months?
I think messaging is important. How you know, interact with the community members. And I think once the community members see that you have their best interest at heart and you're genuine and really want to make that change, I think that support will be forthcoming. But also, if there is not that undue influence with to constituency by either side of the political fence,
but
I
you
think
know,
it will give that greater balance
but you
and
know,
equity to the process.
You know that the People's National Party isn't going to stand aside, nor will the Jamaica Labour Party stand aside and not influence their voters to turn out against your party. And you know that they will now go at the undecided and try and tell them to come on either side as well. So isn't it the case whereby you're expecting the unexpected to happen?
No, what I was speaking to is the fact of how money play in the political process. And we know that it is a way of influencing voters. So what I'm trying to say is that if the constituents are able to recognize that, you know, when they are undue influence, that the representation that they seek is not forthcoming. But if there's a balance, there's an equity where that undue influence is not used, then it gives a greater chance of a third party or an individual like myself making that impact and that inroad, and is able to pull that support.
All right, Germaine, over to you. I definitely want to get your take on this. But what do you think it would take structurally and culturally for a third party? You know, well, as a matter of fact, I'll put that question to you. I gather that Germaine isn't here with us now. But what do you think that it would take, both structurally and culturally, for your party or any third party to actually gain some grounds and to thrive in that environment?
Well, the minds of the people are changing, and they are more clearly seeing things for what it is.
What is that?
It is my view that a lot of persons have stayed away from politics as a result of what they see happening. The Jamaican people are more politically aware. And I think in time, with the greater financial support to a third political party, then you will see that political party being able to impose in itself on the electorate. Media plays a great role in all of this, and the traditional media is non-reliant in giving that third party, bringing them in the public eye. And also, when you look at the polls, the polls, so when the polls is conducted, no reference is made of third political party. It is not that the third political party is not making the traction, but the questionnaires or the question is not posed or crafted in a manner to gauge whether or not the voters are.
All right. So here's what I'm not in a position. I don't think I'm in a position to understand nor agree with you fully. So you have started out by saying that the media pretty much has not given a third party enough of a platform to make the statements that it would like to make. So, but one, you are here. Separate from the fact that you are here, how many persons, for example, the UIC has put forward to mount a campaign against 63, remember, we're looking at 63 constituencies, all right, 2 major political parties who are in all those constituencies. So you're talking about 126 individuals against whom you will run. Do you have 15 persons that will be able to mount a reasonable defense against that larger number?
First, let me say that there are instances where we have sent out press release. There are instances where we have sent press release and those releases have been blocked for one reason or the other. But if you look at the debate which was held during the last local government election, our party was not asked to send representatives to that political debate. So the organizers of that political debate somehow forget that they're an existing third political party, and as such chooses not to allow our views to be heard on issues of national importance. But I would say that in terms of candidates, we have been able to fill all candidates for all the seats in Kingston. That is Central Kingston, West Kingston, and East Kingston and Port Royal. There are 2 seats that are filled in St. Andrew. There's 1 in St. Catherine. There's 2 in St. Elizabeth.
And there's 1 in the West.
There's 1 in Westmoreland. There's 1 in St. Catherine. And I know that there are persons who are currently being vetted for the constituency that they have applied to represent. So
what I'm hinting at, is that you have described about 10 candidates that you have.
There are more than 10. Those are what come to memory.
And that's what's in the papers. No, So there's about 10 candidates there.
Well, what I can confirm.
So confirm. Yeah, but we have to work on what you can confirm.
There are 16. There are 16 that are confirmed, but also there are persons who are currently being vetted. For representation.
You realize, though, that then you are able to only mount is like 25%, occupancy rate. That's what we're looking at now, So the question, well, never mind that though, but the question that I want to ask, do you think that the UIC's policy platform, you think it's credible enough to withstand scrutiny, or is it still an evolving platform?
Nothing is ever etched in stone. I think the policies can stand up to scrutiny. I think there are good policies there. I think the Jamaican people are actually catching on onto our policies idea, and every day persons are calling in to ask questions, asking for clarification, about our policies.
How do you respond to criticism that have been made, levied in the public, that your policies are more populist in their nature rather than practical? So in other words, this sounds like pie in the sky, because we don't know how you're going to fund, how you're going to replace the money, because we're not getting any, you're not going to have any land taxes. You're not going to be having, well, you're reducing GCT, you're looking at educational reform, you're looking to stamp out corruption, all these things that you're planning on doing. It takes cash to care. But what we have not heard is how you will sufficiently be able to get the resources to do all these things. And you said that you're not going to get private equity or private funds. You're going to go to public, John Public for that. But John Public is already in a bind. How do you propose to, how do you combat then the view that John Public has to say, well, your views are kind of populist and they're not practical?
Not at all. It is not so. In every election, political parties put forward their manifesto proposal, and to some extent, it can be seen as populist in its view, because it is tend to catch and appeal to the general public. I am not aware of any political party that have put out a manifesto which have stated how they are going to raise funding. And as such, we think our policies are not just populist.
They're practical.
They're practical, but it's also a contract that we're actually making with the Jamaican public to say, if and whenever we are given the chance, these are the things that we intend to do.
All right. So we have an issue with accountability. Many persons have made that statement. So my question to you now, what does real accountability look like in a system where public opinion is deeply polarized? So right now, yes, so one hand is saying that this is the most corrupt, another hand is saying that they're not as corrupt. And so we're deeply polarized now. What does accountability look like for the UIC?
Accountability for the UIC is letting the axe fall where it lies. We feel that if there are corrupt practices, it should be dealt with to the full extent of the law, even if the person is of your own, and that there should be unbiased within the system to ensure that justice is done and that justice is never delayed.
Mm. Do you think that what is it, what would you need to have a level playing field? And this is, so we're near to the end of tonight's program, but what are some of the systems or reforms, like for example, civic education or campaign finance transparency, that the UIC would need to see in order to have a level playing field?
Okay, earlier before we came on, I was speaking to the fact that what the UIC intend to create is what we call a non-partisan constitutional republic, in that each individual, when they are elected as representative of the community, but not on a political party basis. And when they represent their constituency and come to the legislative process, they are deliberating policy as an individual who is represented a constituency. But when you talk about leveling the playing field, what the UIC intend to do, if it gets that opportunity to make that constitutional change, in that individual, it would allow for individuals who want to take part in that process to put themselves forward, and then there would have been a process of vetting each person, similar to what would in other jurisdictions where there are a runoff. So each person would have given the opportunity for equal airtime, debate in town hall debate and so forth. And then private interest would not have that opportunity to fund a political campaign, but that funding for the media and so forth, town hall, would have come from the government coffers.
But what you're proposing, though, is a system that you can only change that system to what you are describing if you have been a part of this particular system, you have won on this particular system, and then when you take office, then you change it to that.
Well, that is so, and that's why we are proposing and asking for the Jamaican people to come out, give us our support, go to our website, inquire, donate, share the word with others so that the organization can grow and that we can, fulfill the vision that we intend for Jamaica.
All right, so while you're saying that, though, I want you to tell, and this is where you get the opportunity now, you are on the platform, to tell for those who feel left out, those voters who feel left out, those voters who feel unheard, those voters who feel disillusioned, what's your message to those voters?
I would say don't be discouraged. Go to our website, join, become a member. There's an open discussion group on WhatsApp. There's a Zoom meeting every Thursday, hosted by a young man, Jordan Cunningham. If you go to our website or social media pages, all that information is there for you to come and ask questions, inquire. All of your concern will be heard and answered during that Zoom meeting format where individual can come and ask questions freely. Any question, burning issues that they have, they could come to that Zoom meeting, ask, contact the numbers and gain the necessary information that is required.
All right, no problem. So, Mr. Barnett, we want to thank you for taking the time to sit with me and having this conversation. Tribal politics may win elections, but they rarely win trust. If change is to come, it must be rooted in principle, built on participation, and powered by people, not parties. Until next time, I am Kwame Thomas. Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep the conversation going.